Good morning. We've done this song before, but I'm going to teach it to you again because the response part comes pretty quickly after the call part. So I'll sing and you sing. Ready? And we'll go through it and we'll sing it together. In the name of love, in the name of love, with a heart of grace, decorate this place. And I'm sorry. Let's start over. In the name of love, with a heart of grace, overflow in us, decorate this place. As it is below, so it is above. May we always stand in the name of love. And then we'll sing the chorus together. You'll remember the chorus. Ready? 2, 3, 4. Good start. In the name of love, with a heart of grace, overflow in us, decorate this place. As it is below, so it is above. May we always stand in the name of love together. When the veil is gone, there's only one of us, only one, in the name of love. When the veil is gone, then we will sing this song, all as one, in the name of love. In the name of love, may we always be seeking out the best till we all are free. Living in a world we've been dreaming of, where we stand as one in the name of love. When the veil is gone, there's only one of us, only one, in the name of love. When the day is done, we will sing this song, all as one, in the name of love. In the name, in the name of love, in the name of love, in the name of love, in the name of love. When the veil is gone, there's only one of us, only one, in the name of love. When the day is done, we will sing this song, all as one, in the name of love. When the veil is gone, there's only one of us, only one, in the name of love. When the day is done, we will sing this song, all as one, in the name of love. In the name of love, 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 in the name of love. You guys sound good. One life living as you and me, one light shining as you and me, one love loving as you and me, 'cause God is all there is. Won't you join us? One life living as you and me, one light shining as you and me, one love loving as you and me, 'cause God is all there is. Oh, and I'm shining and me. One love, loving as you and me. 'Cause God is all there is. One life living as you and me. One light shining as you and me. One love, loving as you and me. 'Cause God is all there is. Oh, and I'm shining from the inside out. I'm so happy. I just wanna shout. One life living as you and me. One light shining as you and me. One love loving as you and me. 'Cause God is all there is. One life living as you and me. One light shining as you and me. One love loving as you and me. 'Cause God is all there is.
Good morning. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living Santa Rosa. Thank you to our inspiring band for opening our hearts with your beautiful music. I'm Julie Burns, former trustee and a licensed practitioner here at the center, and I'm so glad to be with you today. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. And please know that your children are welcome here too. They can sit with you here in the sanctuary or in our family room behind you. And we also have a fun coloring table out in the social hall. We'll even post your children's crayon art on our bulletin board by that table. And thank you also to our live stream viewers. We are so grateful you are sharing this time with us. And live streamers on Facebook and YouTube, if you love watching us online, please consider sharing us with your friends by clicking that shiny share button at the bottom of the screen. This helps us get the word out and share this beautiful teaching with the world. If you would like to know more about what's happening here at our center, please visit our website, cslsr.org. There you will find the Sunday Bulletin by clicking on the image of the typewriter on our website. It has everything that's happening all month long at our center. And if you are new and wondering what are we all about, please pick up the What We Believe pamphlet at our information table or email Linda Hahn and she can send you a digital copy. Here at the Center for Spiritual Living Santa Rosa, we are motivated by a vision of a healthy, loving world. This global vision calls us to imagine a world that works for everyone. We envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, and where there is generous and continuous sharing of these resources. We support this vision through the 5 core spiritual practices of our teaching. Would you please read them with me? Spiritual study, affirmative prayer, meditation, selfless service, and spiritual circulation. I trust that somewhere between the music, the meditation, the prayer, the practices, and the messages is exactly what you need for the next step of your spiritual unfoldment. You are so welcome here. Now let's enjoy some music before our short time of contemplation in silence before our prayer.
Lover of my soul and keeper of my spirit, nothing can separate us. We are one. Won't you join me? Oh, lover of my soul. Oh, lover of my soul, and keeper of my spirit. Nothing can separate us. We are one. We are one. We are one. Oh, we are one. Nothing can separate us. We are one. All nations on the earth. All nations on the earth. All life upon the planet. Nothing can separate us. We are one. We are one. We are one. Oh, we are one. Nothing can separate us. We are one. Oh, we are one. Oh, we are one. Nothing can separate us. We are one.
It is in this softness, this sweetness, this gentleness, this peace that we turn our focus and our attention to that which is the substance and sustainer of all that is. The original impulse, which has no beginning, has no end, it is infinite in nature. It is love, it is peace, it is power. And I recognize that I and everyone within the sound and outside of the sound of my voice is an expression of that one love, that one light, that one divine spirit. And so I recognize this in this communion today as we fellowship, as we share, as we give, as we receive in song, in word, in heart, in our common knowing upon where and whence we have our foundation. So I'm grateful for all that is occurring here right now, and its further expression as this beautiful day continues. That our heart simply praises and says thanks. And in that I let this word be. And so it is. Good morning. My name is Lawrence Edwards. I am a licensed practitioner here at the Center for Spiritual Living. Please join me in reading this week's affirmation. I am grateful for the waters of life that sustain me.
I've seen my share of struggle when I thought that I knew best, when I sailed through the storm instead of stopping to rest. And it always seemed the hardest when I made up my stubborn mind. Well, I'm changing my ways this time. Wanna be like water coming down the mountain into shadowy canyons, flowing from pool to stream. Wanna be like water, head uphill no more. I am bound for the sea. Have you ever seen an eagle head straight into the wind? He doesn't pick a fight, spreads his wings and just gives in. And in the end he always makes it home just fine. I guess he knows that every storm subsides. Wanna be like water in the shadowy mountains, into shadowy canyons, flowing from pool to stream. Wanna be like water, head uphill no more. I am bound for the sea. I'll let nature take its course. No more thinking that I know where this river's meant to go. I have railed against the stars for the cards that I've been dealt, for the lottery I've never won, for the heartache I have felt. But it always seemed when I let go of expectation and regret, life has plenty of surprises for me yet. Wanna be like water coming down the mountain into shadowy canyons, flowing from pool to stream. Wanna be like water and uphill no more. I am bound for the sea. I wanna be like water coming down the mountain into shadowy canyons, flowing from pool to stream. Wanna be like water and uphill no more. I am bound for the sea.
Woo! You know, I gotta say, Christopher Fritchie, you seem to read my mind as far as the songs that go along with our talks here, because I couldn't think of a better song for our talk today. But before I dive into that, I wanted to say, one, I'm Reverend Russ. I'm not Dr. Edward, but Dr. Edward says hello, and he sends his love all the way from Geneva, Switzerland. He's currently in Geneva right now helping some practitioners to get graduated. And what's really cool about that story is that these are practitioners who've traveled to Geneva from Ukraine, and some of them came all the way from Kenya. We got some photos here that Dr. Edwards shared with us of these wonderful practitioners. And wow, I am so inspired by this because I couldn't think of a better story to tie into our talk today about the waters of life. That's the talk title today, The Waters of Life. Because like the waters of life, these amazing practitioners were not held back by their borders. They were not held back by obstacles. They weren't even held back by war in the case of Ukraine on their journey towards graduation and towards becoming practitioners. And what's so inspiring for me is that their willingness to be of service, to transform their way of being despite the obstacles in front of them, is such an inspiration. And so I invite all of us to give them a nice warm round of applause, because what an amazing thing that they are doing, and what an amazing thing that we are doing as not just our center, but Centers for Spiritual Living. And so I love the topic of water, and there's this amazing story that comes out of Sufi Islam that I want to share with you today, that it's one of my favorite spiritual stories, and it's something that we're going to refer back to for most of this talk. So it goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a stream of water. And from its course in the far-off mountains, passing through every kind and description of countryside, it at last reached the sands of a desert. And just as it had crossed every other barrier, the stream tried to cross this one. But it found that as fast as it ran into the sand, its waters disappeared. It dashed itself against the sands in frustration, but it saw that it was getting nowhere. It was convinced, however, that its destiny was to cross this desert, and yet there seemed to be no way to do it. But now, a hidden voice, coming from the desert itself, whispered to the stream, "The wind crosses the desert, and so can the stream." Of course, the stream objected that the wind can fly, and this is why it can cross the desert. I'm a stream, I can't fly. And the sands replied, "By hurtling in your accustomed way, you cannot get across. You will either disappear or you'll become a marsh. You must allow the wind to carry you to your destination." "But how could this happen?" the stream asked. And its reply was, "By allowing yourself to be absorbed by the wind." Oh, this idea was not acceptable to the stream at all. After all, it had never been absorbed before. It didn't want to lose its individuality, and once having lost it, how was one to know that one's identity could ever be regained? "The wind," said the sand, "performs this function. It takes up water, it carries it over the desert, and it lets it fall again. But how can I know that this is true?" "It is so. And if you do not believe it, you cannot become more than a quagmire." And then the stream, a little bit more timidly, said, "But can I not remain the same stream that I am today?" "You cannot, in either case, remain so," the whisper said. And when it heard this, echoes began to arise in the thoughts of the stream. Dimly, it remembered a state in which it, or perhaps some part of it, had been held in the arms of a wind. And so the stream took a leap of faith, and it raised its vapor into the welcoming arms of the wind, which gently and easily bore it upwards and over the desert, letting it fall softly as rain, whence it reached the peak of a mountain many, many miles away, where it then became a river. Ooh, it sends tingles up my spine to read that. I love that story so much. So today we're talking about water, and we're talking not just about the physical water and what's going on with it in our world today, but also water as a metaphor for the flow of life itself. And I love water as a metaphor because water, literally and figuratively, connects us all. We cannot live without water. Indeed, over the course of human history, it's become very common for us human beings to live next to sources of water, whether they're large or small. Water actually helps us to build communities. And life as we know it simply cannot exist without water. Now, if I can get a little sciencey and nerdy with you right now, the water molecule itself is such an example of this divine connection. Here we have these two hydrogen atoms that on their own don't know really how to connect to one another. But then along comes oxygen and says, I will help you to connect. And so they connect to that oxygen. And now we've got H2O. And if you want to get a little punny with me today, I like to think of that O as oneness. Yeah. And so this water of life is constantly flowing and shifting and changing. And I think we see that in our own lives, don't we? For example, imagine that your life is a river. What happens if you try to swim upstream from the flow of your life? It's not fun, is it? It can be a little hair-raising and challenging. What happens when we try to block that river or put up a dam so that the waters can't flow? Well, much the same, I think. Yes? You know, I'm reminded a few months ago, I had this book idea pop into my mind that just got my heart singing so much. And I started to brainstorm about it and started to do some work, and then all of a sudden, all of my dams started to come up on my creative process and the water, like the flow of my water of life. Oh, it's not actually going to be something people want to read. That's one of the stories. Or I don't have time to write this. There's another story. Or, oh, you know, you're not gonna be able to put all your ideas together. It's not any good. Blah 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 blah. All of these stories come up, and each and every one of these stories is a dam that I find myself putting up, preventing me from moving into the actual creative flow of letting this come forth. There was a stream of life that's been finding its way into my heart, but my stories have been getting in the way, and it's something that I'm working on. The problem with this way of being is that, of course, I suffer when that's going on. We suffer when we put up blocks to the flow of the waters of our lives. The good news, though, is that the flow of life itself, the waters of life itself, that flow never actually stops. It can only be hindered and slowed down by our ego and our ego's desires. And particularly, and this is a word that's going to come up a lot today, our willfulness. So the good news is that even though we might put up these blocks, and I certainly have my own gift for putting them up, we'll say, even though that water might be blocked, it might be slowed down, it might be delayed, it always finds a way to get where it's going to go, given enough time. Think of the ages that it took for the Colorado River to carve out the Grand Canyon. That did not happen overnight. You know, I grew up in Wisconsin, and much of Wisconsin's landscape was sculpted by glaciers, by frozen ice that nevertheless was still flowing for thousands and thousands of years. That's the power of water in our lives. And when I look at the water crises that we see in the world today, which on one end of the spectrum, as we've experienced here in Sonoma County and in California, we have drought, and we've had drought for many years now. And then on the flip side of it, we have floods, and we've had floods for many years. And it seems to be one end of the extreme or the other, right? Well, that's kind of how willfulness works too. And when I see these giant problems, I see perhaps an outpicturing of that willfulness. That as a society, perhaps, there was a little bit of willfulness. And I'm not saying that to go into any judgment or story, but just because for the longest time, I feel like we have not known a different way of being. I certainly haven't. And so doing and embracing that willfulness, we actually can sometimes create more problems than we actually solve, can't we? Yeah. You know, a lot of those waters, like the Colorado River, again, is a great example of waters being diverted to, for a good reason to serve communities, but then we see other impacts, particularly around indigenous communities. We heard about that from Dr. Edward last week, that oftentimes these water rights were created without regard to the indigenous communities that they would impact. And so that's the challenge with this willfulness, because willfulness tends to be rather short-sighted. And that's because willfulness tends to focus on one specific particular goal, and it's not very good at looking at the big picture. And so I have to ask myself the question, what's the antidote to willfulness? How might we do things a little bit differently? Well, and that's where I get to the other fun W word for today, and that is willingness. And willingness has such a powerful impact on the flow of the waters of our lives. So think back to our opening story. What happened to that stream when it was willful, when it was dashing itself against the desert? It was getting absorbed. It wasn't getting anywhere. And what happened on the flip side when it surrendered to the flow of nature, allowing itself to be carried by the wind? Now, as we saw in the story, that was a scary proposition. And I think it's important that we really get in touch with that aspect of this, because it can be frightening. It can be frightening to take that leap of faith. I think it's scary because willingness oftentimes asks us to sacrifice. Sometimes that sacrifice is an identity that might not be working. Or maybe it's a way of life, a way of being in the world that isn't working. Maybe our ways of being are not just holding us back, but holding others back. What helps me with that when I feel frightened about times where I am invited to change, where I run up into an obstacle like that, is remembering that the word sacrifice can't be what it is without that root word inside of it, sacred. Sacrifice means to make sacred. And we heard about that last week with Dr. Edwards' talk, didn't we, about how many indigenous peoples, they see the way that us Westerners work in the United States and how we seem to separate ceremony out from our day-to-day lives. Well, to make sacred means that every aspect of our lives is ceremony, is ritual, is something meaningful, is something that is rooted in our connection to spirit. And think back to how our friendly stream had to sacrifice its identity as a stream in order to find its way over the desert. And how, even though the sacrifice for that stream was frightening, it nevertheless made its way to its destination. And what's even better, what's even more inspiring with the story is it became more than it was before. It actually became a whole river. And so when I look at the large problems of the world, sometimes it can feel to me like there's so much that we would have to sacrifice in order for us to solve these problems. They feel too big. Does anybody feel that same way? Like sometimes the problems in the world, they just feel too big Yeah. The thing that also helps me with that, though, when I run into that particular obstacle is remembering that not only is sacrifice making sacred, but in true sacrifice, we don't actually lose anything. Instead, true sacrifice brings about transformation. A caterpillar has to sacrifice its mobility and its seemingly safe life on that lovely tree branch by becoming goo in a cocoon. And only then can it be reborn as a butterfly, freer than it was before. Wow, what a leap of faith, right? You're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to hang out on this tree branch here, and oh look, I guess I'll be a cocoon now. What's the worst that could happen? And then it becomes a cocoon, and I have to wonder, does the caterpillar know that the butterfly's on the other end of that leap of faith? I don't know, but that's so like our lives. That's what it means to take a leap of faith, to move into transformation. And so it helps me to recognize that my own sacrifices help to bring about a better world, even though I might not know where they're going to lead me. When I was much younger, I had such a political stint. I was certainly a product of my mother. She was very much politically active. She was a teacher, and boy, oh boy, she had many, many opinions. And as a kid, I took those on. I brought those into my own consciousness, and so I became super political. And the way that I became political was super unhealthy, because here I was thinking I had all of the answers. I was gonna save the world because I was right. And you know what happens when you're right? Someone else has to be wrong, don't they? And so I looked at the other side of the political spectrum, and I'm like, they're the enemy. They must be removed from power. They have to go away. All of these things would go through in my mind about how there's just no talking to this other side. I can't do it, yada, 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 because I was so trapped in my willfulness, my desire to be right, that there wasn't any opportunity for conversation. And moreover, that willfulness that I was in, it didn't actually solve any of the problems that I thought I was going to solve in the world. It just made me more angry, and it just made me more separate. And it just made me suffer, if I'm being truly honest. And so the question that came up was, well, how, now that I know about this thing called willingness, can I embrace it as a means to bring about change, not just for myself, but for the world, the communities around me? And I was thinking about this, and there were 3 steps that found their way into my mind. And I'm not saying these are all the steps. I'm not saying that this is the only way to approach this, but this is kind of what came up and worked for me. And that first step is probably one of the hardest steps, but it was this step of letting go of my attachment to any desired outcome, and especially letting go of all of the stories that I would tell myself about how that outcome should be accomplished. Now, it's true, we may have really good ideas about how we can solve problems in life, but where we can get trapped in willfulness is when we become attached to those ideas at the expense of the larger picture. So think of like what it looks like if you're kind of like grasping for dear life onto something. That's something that I had experienced when I was younger. I'm desperately grasping to these ideas and trying to like force them upon others. What happens when that goes on is we close ourselves off from the full range of possibilities. That grasping limits us. And it does that because what if a better idea came along? What if a better idea came along and we're so committed to our own idea of how to solve this problem that we completely miss that better idea? It certainly happened to me a lot. It's one of those things that helped to teach me the power of collaboration. Attachment to the outcome can lead us to prioritize the product over the process. And that process is growth and healing and transformation. And so that leads us to the second step that popped into my mind, and that is taking the time, and this is where we get spiritual because we are a spiritual community, taking the time to find out where it is that we belong along the flow of our own lives. And we do that by tuning into spirit, by checking in with our heart, by going into meditation and being in prayer, by being in spiritual community here. And then when we do get there, there's an invitation for us to surrender to the process that's aligned with that which we want to experience. And if that word process doesn't work for you, you can think of the flow of a stream. What this really means, though, is that we should be wary of getting caught up in the end goal at the expense of really getting to know what path it is that we're walking. And in my own experience, this is how I've been able to better avoid some of those unintended consequences of willfulness. Because now I know that I'm in alignment with the flow of the waters of life. And so think of, for example, when we think of a process, think of music. Music is a process. If I ask Chris Ritchie to come up here and just play an E major chord on his guitar for 10 minutes, I'm pretty sure everybody would walk out of the room. Sorry, Chris. But nobody wants to hear an E major chord just played 10 minutes because there's no change there. Music works because it's interrelated. There's a relationship between the major chords and the minor chords and the harmonies and the tones. All of that works together to create something that is greater than the whole. Process versus product. So the key for us is to learn how to embrace that process over the product, because it's going to help us to open up to the possibilities. The possibilities that start to come out of our heart when our heart tells us what our path actually is. And now the third step. And I love this step because this has always been my growth edge, is training ourselves to listen to everything around us, whether it's other people or the natural world itself. Listening is an inherently willing act. It sets aside the willfulness of our ego and it allows the voices of others to be heard. And this helps us to realize a deeper sense of community, a deeper sense of oneness. And it's that oneness, I think, that is trying to find its way forward, because I know that when we look at these big problems of the world, there isn't a single solution to them other than oneness. Because the more we realize our oneness, the more we learn to speak with one voice. The more we learn to move forward in life together. Not as the chaos of many ideas, but as one synergistic whole, as though all of humanity has become this beautiful symphony. And so how do we do this? How can we learn to listen better? Well, what I've learned is that one of the best things that I can do when I actively tell myself, okay, I'm going to listen right now, is to remind myself that I should not be waiting to respond to what somebody is saying, but rather I should listen and digest what somebody has said before I say anything. I can ask myself, do I really understand what is being said right now? Do I really understand, or do I agree with this? Do I agree with parts of it, or maybe disagree with parts of it? And then it takes me to a deeper question, and this is where I start to realize some of that oneness. Can I understand where this person is coming from? What's motivating them with what they're saying? Can I perhaps put myself into their shoes and see truly out of their eyes? So it can be a challenging practice when we start. It certainly is one that I'm still working on, but it's so powerful because that's where we start to feel connection with others. And it's kind of like yawning, right? You know, you yawn in a room and then 20 other people yawn in a room. We mirror each other as human beings. We actually have these things called mirror neurons in our brain that make us mirror the actions and activities of those around us. So when we listen to others, we ourselves then are listened to. We make it safe for the exchange of ideas. And that's a really powerful thing. And then another really wonderful practice, you heard me talk about nature, and of course that's our theme this month, that I find so helpful for bringing me out of my willfulness and into a state of listening is simply going into nature. We went into nature yesterday with our spirit walk. We had a wonderful turnout and we had a wonderful walk in nature. And it was amazing seeing the new relationships and the old relationships that were renewed on this walk just by being in nature. And for me, nature is one of those things that when I know I'm in my willfulness, when it feels like I just cannot see a path forward, when I am that stream that's dashing itself against the sands that I'm trying to cross, when I go into nature, all of that tends to fall away. I don't even have to do anything. I just go find myself a perch up on top of a mountain somewhere and sit for a bit. And let nature tell me what it's going to tell me. And I think the reason that that works so well is because nature itself is an example of flow, of the cycles of life. And it's hard to ignore that when we're in the middle of it. And so I'm going to conclude today by saying that the big problems that we see, like our water crises in the world right now, I think require a larger, a more evolved consciousness than that which created them. And we can create that consciousness. We can embrace that consciousness. And just as I had to learn how to become more willing to let go of my own ideas of how things should be, I think we all can embrace and seek to better understand these larger ideas that come forth when we come together in shared sacrifice, this shared spiritual practice of making sacred our lives in the world around us. I often have to consider how my closed-mindedness, my willfulness, my desire to be right really has never gotten me anywhere. And so how can I ever expect to get the world where I believe it should be if I can't get myself where I believe I should be? But the more I surrender that willfulness, surrendering my desire for any particular outcome, taking the time to listen, seeking out how I can become part of the process of healing in our world, and indeed practicing a lot of self-care in the midst of this too, by the way, because self-care is so important when we do these practices. Well, I have seen my life transform in ways that I cannot put into words. When I let go of the heavy anchor of willfulness that drags me down in the flow of the waters of life, I'm able to float more comfortably along that stream. And even better, it's allowed me to help others come along for the ride, to transform with me. So I ask you this as we close out today. What might it mean for you to trust that whispering desert and allow the wind to carry you away to a new and better life? Let us take that into prayer, shall we? So if it feels good, I invite you to put your hands over your heart and feel the warmth of that inner knower, that inner beer, that inner life force. Truly, it is the waters of life that I recognize here and now. The waters of life that are present through everything. This divine flow, this divine love, this divine creation, this divine oneness. That is that that I recognize here and now, and I know myself to be one with it, just as everyone here in our sanctuary, on our live stream, and indeed in our community, in all of our communities. We are all one. We are all individual expressions of this perfect divine flow. We are the waters of life made manifest in form. And so I know that we are love, we are wholeness, we are oneness. And it's that wholeness, that love, that oneness that I know is present for us here and now that makes it so effortless for us to test out the waters of willingness in our day-to-day lives. I know that as we move forth in the world, that there is no problem that could ever get in the way of that divine flow of life that flows as and through us. And so I know that we are truly blessed in this, that we are that transformative force that the world has been asking for. Whether it's in our individual lives or in the world itself, I know that we are one. We are one, we are one, we are one. And that is so, so beautiful to witness. And so I bless us as we go forth, entertaining what it might mean to make sacred each and every aspect of our lives. And I am so grateful for this, grateful for the fulfillment of this prayer, and grateful for each and every voice that says yes to the willingness to making things sacred. I am so, so grateful. And I release this word into that law that never comes back to me void. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you. And so, now is the time of our service where we typically would go into our ceremony of offering and pass the baskets in the past. And what I wanted to say today is that I have been so touched and impressed by the way that Dr. Edward has really given us a transparent and kind way to look at the big picture of our financial projections for this year. It means a lot to me to be a part of a spiritual community where we can hear an honest and blame-free message about the impact of the pandemic and be invited to be part of that solution. So if you haven't heard Dr. Edwards' message, here's a recap. Our world, as we know, has been in a 2.5-year pandemic, and everyone and everything has been impacted by it. Some of our members have relocated, and some have unfortunately lost their livelihood. Others are okay and thriving. So we are inviting everyone to be part of the solution for our center. And so here are some things that we can do to help our community to thrive. One of them is including the center in your prayers. Another one, and you've all done this today online or here in person, show up for services in person or online. And another way is contributing financially in a way that feels good for you and your family. And finally, you can tell your friends and family about all of the exciting things that are happening here at our center. And in a moment, I'll invite Julie back up here with some of the things that are going on. Now, it's commonly known among fundraising professionals that people like to give to successful operations, right? I'm guessing you all like to give to a successful operation. We really want to assure you here on behalf of the staff, the ministers, the practitioners, that Science of Mind, our teaching, is alive and well in our people's hearts, and that we continue to teach and to heal and to celebrate this life-affirming message. And did you know that our center has members who cook for the unsheltered on Tuesdays and Thursdays every week? That we have an inspiring jail ministry that helps to bring our Science of Mind teaching to those who are incarcerated? That our center has been able to help many of the people who were impacted by the fires and the floods here in Sonoma County and beyond in the last few years. And indeed, we ourselves see our graduation of the new practitioners in Geneva, but we ourselves have graduated countless numbers of practitioners and ministers that are helping to continue the good work of our movement. And so I say this because it's just a small list of how your contributions are helping us to realize that world that works for everyone that Julie was talking about in our opening statement. So if you would like to give financially, we do have a number of ways that you can do this. You can send us a check. You can drop your gift on the baskets on the way out of service today. You can give online on our website. We have a wonderful auto-giving option that you can talk at the information table with Linda Han or Mitzi, and they will get you set up for that. So however frequently you wish to auto-give, it'll do that. And then finally, we have our text to give. And as Dr. Edward has said, the number is a little hard to remember, but we do have flyers with the number. And what's cool is you can send a text message with the dollar amount that you'd like to give to that phone number, 707-675-2399, and it will help you set it up. So the next time you can just type in whatever number you want, and poof, you're done. And it takes like 10 seconds. It's wonderful. So I believe our ushers have those cards, and we have them at the information table. And I wanted to say that however you choose to give, whether it's through your prayers, through being here in person, your volunteering, or your financial gifts, please know that everything that you share with us is so incredibly appreciated. As Dr. Edwards said last week, we are the landlord of this building, of this center, and your gifts help us to continue to do this amazing good work in the world, and they also help us to keep the lights on and the roof dry. So please know that everything that is received here, we are so grateful for that. And so now I invite us to bless our gifts. If it feels good to you, you can go ahead and place your hand on your heart and repeat after me. I bless this gift. I send it forth to heal and prosper. It does amazing things in the world. And so it is. Thank you so much. I'm going to invite our wonderful Julie Burns back up here to tell us about what's going on in our community. You're all amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Russ, for that beautiful message. Did you notice that Reverend Russ and our musicians and Chris and myself all got the memo of the colors of the waters of life? So, as Russ said, it's time to find out what is going on in our beautiful community. So I have a very special announcement for you. Starting next Sunday, August 21st, and then going forward every following Sunday, we will be hosting in-person prayers with our practitioners from 10 a.m. till 11 a.m. between our two services. Now, please note that some things have changed from how we used to do in-person prayer, which we will go over again with you next week. First, we will be praying in the north wing of the building, which you will be able to access through the glass doors. So if you go out and turn left through the social hall doors and walk up to the last set of glass doors on the building, that's where after-service prayer will be. Second, we are requiring that masks be worn by all congregants receiving prayer. If you do not have one next Sunday, don't worry, we will provide one for you. And please know that if you aren't comfortable wearing a mask, our Zoom after-service prayer is still available and will continue going forward. Due to the pandemic, we have not been able to host in-person prayers for the last 2.5 years. And we are thrilled to finally bring back this beautiful prayer practice for you. There is a power in receiving in-person prayer from our practitioners, and we hope you will take advantage of it next week. Our Being and Belonging group meets today on Zoom from 1:30 to 3. Join them as they explore the ways in which our deep beingness informs our sense of belonging, and how bringing this awareness into the world is a radical act of social change. Their theme is diversity, oneness, and the co-creative power of love. Now, please enjoy 2 videos about Reverend Cheryl McCreary's upcoming workshop, Manifest More Money, and practitioner.
Hi there, I'm Reverend Cheryl McCreary, the creator and facilitator of Manifest More Money. You know, so many of our New Thought communities, our members are struggling right now about money. They're feeling anxiety and fear and powerlessness with the news and the recession, the inflation, all that stuff. It's very easy to forget the truth. The truth is we live in an abundant universe. The truth is unlimited abundance is our divine birthright. It's time to heal our relationship with money. If that's work that you want to do, I invite you to join me in the online course, Manifest More Money. We'll be meeting on 5 Thursdays from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Pacific time, and we will do a deep dive into spiritual practice and practical actions to help you bust through your money set point, to help you release money blocks and limitations, to change your story into a story of money abundance and flow, and to move into divine right relationship with money. If that sounds like work you want to do, we're going to start off on September 1st. So join me. And the great thing is your center has its own unique registration link. So use that link and that link only, because when you register, 50% of your fee goes back to your center. So we're profit sharing with your center. If you want to join me in Manifest More Money, I look forward to seeing you on September 1st. See you then.
Hello, I'm Betty Smith. I'm going to be teaching an upcoming class called The Power of Meditation. It begins on Thursday evening, August 18th at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. We use Dr. Edwards' award-winning book with the same title. This class explores many types of meditation you can learn to strengthen your practice at home. Everyone meditates a little differently, so we will explore loving kindness, heart coherence, reciting mantras, and letting go to see if one of those is right for you. There will be time for class discussion and sharing best practices. I love to teach, yet I learn something every time I do. Register on the website by clicking on the picture of the woman holding the book. There are discounts for seniors, for teens and young adults, and if you've completed 5 spiritual enrichment courses, the 6th one is free. It's all on the website. I hope you will join me.
All right, shall we close this out? But before we close, if there is anything heavy on your heart, if perhaps you cried yourself to sleep last night, if you're having a hard time, I invite you to take advantage of our after-service prayer over Zoom today. That's available to you via our website. We've got the link right there that you can go to. And if you can't catch it now, you can certainly catch the 12 o'clock version of it as well. And it's just such a good way for us to get back into that feeling of being in the flow of life. So I really invite you to that. And I'm really excited next week about our in-person prayer. We've got this amazing group of practitioners who have been working really hard to bring this back, knowing that this was one of the most beloved things, one of the most beloved services that we offered here at the center. So I invite you, if you do come here in person, to check that out after service, in between the services next week. It's only going to be between the services, so I want to be clear, it's not after the 11 o'clock service. It's really just the from the 10 o'clock until 11 o'clock that we're making that available. So shall we close this out? Yes? Why don't you go ahead and stand up if that feels comfortable, if you're able, and repeat after me. Something wonderful is happening through me right now. It is this thing called life. Life is in my mind. Life is in my body. And life is in my affairs. I think it, I feel it, and I accept it. Just the way that it is. And thank you, life. Please know with me that you are never alone, that Spirit is right with you are, that you right where you are, that you have only to look within at any moment to know that you're guided, sustained, and empowered by a presence that expresses itself as you in this world. In deepest gratitude, let us live our lives accordingly so that in everything that we do, say, and think, we honor this presence within. And so it is. Please enjoy the closing music and have a wonderful week. Thank you.
I release and I let go. I let the Spirit with